Hey there, guys and gals. Welcome to the cheapest made podcast. Probably, I don't know. I record on an iMac and do this through GarageBand, so maybe somebody has an antiquated PC from the 90s that does it. Nonetheless, you're listening to Propaganda Comics Podcast, episode numero 2. Today, we're going to be talking about how Archie and the gang took you to church in the 1980s. Oh, that's right. So Archie Comics is integrated into American subculture as much as baseball or apple pie. That's my stance. You can argue if you want to, whether you've read it or not. Everybody knows who Archie and his friends are, just like everybody knows. I'm going to say it again, just like everybody knows who Bazooka Joe, God bless him, love the gum, uh, is. Yeah. So Archie made his appearance on December 22nd, 1941, in Pep Comics. They were hoping to appeal to people that like the Hardy Boys films with Mickey Rooney and all that kind of thing. Um, so they made this smooth or goofy, however you want to look at him, red-headed high school boy. He liked the girl down the street named Betty. It just totally became such a thing. It took over the comic, and later it was named Archie Comics through the staple. Several issues down the line, Veronica came along. Katie Keene is also living in Riverdale, so is Josie and the Pussycats, later Sabrina the Teenage Witch. All of those are part of Archie Comics. Nonetheless, Archie, Jughead, Betty, Veronica, you know the lot. The Riverdale gang there at Riverdale High School, they're the main characters. So before I go into the whole church thing, Archie, he's done a lot. They've had a lot of crossovers with different comic book characters, just in more quirky humor. Everything's kind of like teenage high school problems that gets over with quick. They've met Wolverine, they've met the Punisher, Batman 1966, Betty and Veronica met Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. Archie and what is a goofy Mad Magazine-esque bloodbath of a comic or comics has faced off against Predator. I'm talking about from the movie Predator. He went to Riverdale. Archie is the baddest man on the planet, right? So he's had many loves. Betty, Veronica, Katie Keene, Josie McCoy of Josie and the Pussycats. But in the 1980s, Archie and his friends also loved Jesus Christ. Now, did that happen in Archie Comics? Actually, no. So in the time of Archie and things that would go on with Christendom, there was an artist named Al Hartley. Al Hartley worked both at Archie Comics and for Spire Christian Comics. And where he worked at Archie Comics, there was a good relation going there, and he was able to go ahead and use Archie and the gang for these comics that he both illustrated and wrote. They look completely legit. The characters, the writing, all this sort of thing, whole bunch of comics. Archie, Betty, Veronica, Jughead, they're all talking about Jesus. They're praying. They're reading Bibles. They're telling people to get into church. All sorts of things. So I just wanted to throw that out there because there's probably a lot of people that didn't know that there's a lot of Christianity and things that are dealt with in various comics, especially Marvel. Marvel probably more than anything else, unless it's just a Christian comic when that's the agenda to point to Jesus. Marvel deals a lot with that because it's such an integral part of life. It's something there. Nightcrawler, he found acceptance through the church. He's like a monk. He's a devout Catholic. Frank Castle, the Punisher, he was studying to be a priest, but he was unable to forgive the people for killing his family, and now he teaches people about dealing with sin in a whole different sort of way. There's a lot of that's in Marvel Comics. Wolfbane, her dad was a minister, and he was really cruel to her because she transforms into a werewolf, and he says that it came from the devil. All sorts of stuff. But I just wanted to get on here today and just quickly talk about how Archie and the gang, how they preached Jesus heavy and hard in the 1980s in this alternate Archie universe made by Spire Christian Comics, where they preach Jesus hard, heavy, strong. Uh, Something to look into. Again, shout out to Marvel. I'm not going to make this episode about that, but they also did Pilgrim's Progress, the Screw Tape Letters, and the Easter Story. So there's a bunch of that to be found there in the comic book world that maybe everybody isn't privy to. I hope that you all have enjoyed this free podcast. If you enjoy satirical, parodied, overly politicized comics that are entwined around a media biased, very Mad Magazine meets Justice League-esque, you ought to subscribe to Propaganda Comics at www.patreon.com/propaganda comics. Thanks, and I hope you all have a blessed day. Keep reading.